It's your turn to compete in the illegal underground world of extreme ping pong.
I have assembled the most talented athletes from around the globe. Welcome to my Tournament of Champions.
With 10 playable characters from the film. Bust balls this fall, Nintendo Wii and DS.
Goodness gracious, great balls of fury? That's going to make sense in a second. Welcome to Cinemarcade. This is the podcast about movies, video games, and the sparks that fly when those two worlds collide. My name is Steve Guntley, who is joining me here today for this desperate match against life, death, and tiny little plastic balls.
Table tennis champion Justin.
I'm going to take your word on that. Yeah, because you seem to... I mean, you are the table tennis champion of this game.
Yeah,
undisputed.
You are the table tennis champion of this group.
Yeah.
And I am the underdog.
But I'm still not good enough.
Known as J-Ban, who will rise from the bottom to the top, singing Def Leppard.
Yes.
You got to go through Mr. Wong first, and apparently, goddamn, is that hard.
Yes, apparently. Yeah, you can whoop our asses when we're not digital James Hong, but otherwise we can't keep up with you. Today we are talking about Balls of Fury, and if you're really struggling to remember what that is, you're probably not alone. I think this is I described it earlier as noteworthy for not being noteworthy. This is a 2007 comedy that was, I'll give you all the details. Why not? It was released August 29th, 2007. It's directed by Robert Ben Garant and written by Garant and Thomas Lennon. And it stars Dan Fogler, Christopher Walken, Maggie Q, George Lopez, Thomas Lennon, James Hong, Aisha Tyler, Terry Crews, Patton Oswalt, Robert Patrick. A lot of talent involved in this movie. A lot of talent behind the scenes here. But I think I need to start with the most important question, which is, would you prefer to watch this movie exactly as it is, or spend 90 minutes watching a supercut of Christopher Walken saying ping-pong? Because I think I know what my answer is.
Did you say 90 minutes?
Yeah, it would have to be exactly the same length as this movie. It'd be a 90-minute supercut of nothing but Christopher Walken saying ping-pong.
Do you have to loop only him saying ping pong in the movie, or could we get external ping pong recordings?
If we can get him to record more, then all the better.
Like cameo.
I mean, yeah. Let's pay for a cameo.
Does Christopher Walken have a cameo? Let's get him to say ping pong 45 different ways.
I don't know if he's like doing a voice or if that's just the way he says it, but every time he says it in this movie, it made me laugh. It's like that was kind of the biggest laugh in the movie, is just him going ping pong. And I don't know if it's just his accent.
A series of problematic situations in this movie.
I feel like it's not that bad, but it's definitely cultural appropriation in some way, shape, or form.
There's some stuff
for
going
sure.
on.
I think, it's so interesting because, I feel like this is like, I think during the pandemic, I went back and I watched a lot of comedy movies from the 70s and the 80s. By the way, was it The Bachelor? It's Tom Hanks, and he's
The Bachelor Party.
Bachelor Party.
Yeah.
The whole premise of that movie is that he's not supposed to sleep with a prostitute. That is the bare
low
minimum.
stakes.
Or sex worker. Sorry. He's not supposed to sleep in that. And it's like, oh my god, the whole movie was built around this, and that was like a comedic pretense that somebody right before their wedding, oh no. Because that is something that everyone does all the time. And
yeah, was that a thing in the 80s? I don't even know.
I don't know. And it was just like in all the 70s and the 80s movies that I watched, there's like a lot of them are little snapshots in the comedy at that time period. Yeah. And I feel like this movie is a snapshot of comedy in that time period, but when you compare this movie to Super Troopers,
right,
it's just, it falls. I did not laugh once.
That's the biggest thing. All right, so
I got a few laughs, and they weren't the best jokes. They were just the things that I thought were funny.
that's fair. I mean, there's I would say like 2 moments in here where I laughed, and they were kind of both Christopher Walken related. But it's weird that this kind of came out to be so little because, like we said, there is a lot of talent going on behind the scenes here. This is Robert Ben Garant as the director and Thomas Lenn as the writer. People know them from The State, MTV's really amazing 1-season sketch show. Then they went on to create Reno 911, which has become a really weirdly enduring show. That show is still on the air.
It's still on. It's still
on.
Really, like, I don't know. I watch a lot of TikTok clips from Reno 911.
Yeah.
Like I watched it religiously for years because I thought it was hilarious.
It was funny, yeah.
But it's just so funny. Like Aisha Taylor, like big superstar, like nowadays, Lana on Archer.
Yeah.
As well as numerous, like the host of
Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, wasn't she on Talk Soup for a while?
Yeah,
too?
she was on
She
a bunch of things,
Friends,
but like
yeah.
like
Aisha
Terry
Taylor.
Crews, very early in his career, is in this movie. So this movie
Patton
has
Oswalt,
a lot
yeah.
of Patton Oswalt.
Comedic superstar George Lopez.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
like
the
there were
world's
a
funniest
lot
man,
of really
right?
good talent. When I said I didn't laugh at anything, there's a couple of things that I did actually kind of like that were a little subversive.
Yeah.
Like, and again, it's like, I don't know if they meant it to be subversive because it's subversive from a modern perspective. Then they were just making a, like, oh my God, men and being into men joke. I like the idea of like the group of screaming damsels in distress were all men being damsels in distress.
Yeah, it's a bunch of like frat bros. Yeah. Yeah, no, they were setting up kind of a big gay panic joke and then they veered. And I feel like that's sort of the weird thing about this movie. I was really expecting this movie, given the title and the era that this came out, to just be like super offensive, really inappropriate.
Yes.
And like, it's weird how neutral this movie is in a lot of ways. Like you look at the poster, first of all. Let's take a look at that poster. It's Christopher Walken in this outlandish like Asian warlord garb playing ping pong, and you're like, oh God, what the fuck is this? And you're like, okay, is he playing an Asian man? Is it some kind of cultural appropriation thing? That winds up kind of being the funniest thing in the movie to me, is the fact that no, he's not Asian. No one in the movie thinks he's Asian. Christopher Walken isn't pretending to be Asian. The whole funny bit is that he is this guy with this thick New York accent and this weird Christopher Walken mannerisms who has become so powerful that he can just dress like the villain from a kung fu movie and nobody can say anything. And that's kind of like the weird joke about this, is that they're not trying to present him as being an Asian person. And I thought that was the funniest part. But there is a lot of like Asian stereotype stuff with like the wise old master and like
very risque outfits on the ladies.
Yeah, Maggie Q not wearing a whole lot. You know, I'm not mad about it, but you know, I feel bad.
That
for
is,
her.
I think, the right behavior. But yes, that is, or I'm sorry, the right opinion. But yeah, I think it's like, whose choice was it? Is what it comes down to. Was this like director's choice, or was this like, this makes sense, let's just wear this?
They're definitely hearkening back to like a lot of tropes from the 70s. They're definitely making fun of is it Enter the Dragon?
Yeah.
And
It definitely felt like a parody kung fu movie.
like and so they're hearkening back to a lot of things, but like it's definitely like, I don't know. They also mishmashed like different Asian cultures together, like the Japanese and the Chinese, and it was just like, okay, cool. But I don't know. Like starting off at the beginning, this is one of the reasons why I think this movie fails even is because it's so. We've seen this movie 1,000 times. We could
So
improvise
many
this
times.
movie right now. Like it's literally a down and out, washed up athlete. I feel like Documentary Now did this better with the bowling.
Well, I mean, you know what this is playing off of the success of is Dodgeball.
Yeah.
Like a weirdly successful movie from 2004 that would have been kind of at its height of you know, for the kids out there, before memes were omnipresent, the way that we communicated as people was we sat down across the table from each other and we quoted Anchorman lines at each other back and forth until one of us started bleeding from the ears. And,
Unless one of us didn't see Anchorman, and then we just
and then we
quote
asked
other
them
things.
politely but firmly to leave.
Oh, okay.
But
I am closest to the door.
Dodgeball had its little moment like that for at least a little bit, and so I think people were trying to recreate a little bit of that magic, and it's a very similar setup. It's kind of a dorky sport that's not one of like the big three sports that's covered on every movie, and it's just sort of a non-athlete who is supposed to conquer everything. You know, that's kind of the whole gag here. Weirdly, I think the movie that this is most indebted to is Mortal Kombat.
I haven't rewatched it, but I have a huge soft spot for the Mortal Kombat movie. I loved the soundtrack.
Did you watch the new one?
No, I haven't.
The new
watched
one's
the new
good.
One. Really?
The new one's really good. I like it.
I don't know. It was part of my childhood, and like the fucking soundtrack was amazing. And
well, I mean, Cary Hiroyuki Tanaka, who plays Raiden in that movie, is in this movie. Like, I feel like that's not an accident, right? Like this mysterious island, and they fight to the death, but except it's ping pong. Like all of this sounds funnier than it ultimately is, and I think it's just because they never really commit to a theme here. They never really commit to a tone. Like, do we want to be the offensive, edgy comedy? Do we want to be like the more heartwarming comedy? And ultimately, it just feels sort of inert, you know?
And I think, like, you have to go one of two ways. You either have to lean so hard into the comedy that the characters aren't the big deal, or you have to lean into the characters and the comedy comes along with that, but you actually care about the characters. Like Tenacious D, by the end of Tenacious D, you genuinely were like, fuck yeah, I want these guys to win.
Yeah.
But this one, you didn't get many moments to like the
Randy Daytona. All right,
Randy.
so I think this is sort of my biggest problem with the movie is the character of Randy. Now, I don't want to dunk on Dan Fogler. I like Dan Fogler. He's kind of one of those guys who's sort of been like set up to be a big deal like a couple of times and has had a few false starts. He won a Tony he established the main role in 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which is a really fun show. He won a Tony for that, so people started kind of shopping.
I thought that was an actual spelling bee. I was like, he got a Tony for a spelling bee? What the hell?
Well, he sang all his answers. It was really good.
Like, not that I'm dissing against spelling bees, but man, that seems like a weird award to get at a spelling bee.
Yeah, and I think they kind of set him up like he might have had a little moment because he had a standout supporting role in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is like he was like the one likable character.
One likable character in the series. Like, what? There's 3 movies now.
There's 3. I didn't see the second 2, but I think he's still in them. But I think they veer away from him.
I watched the latest one because they replaced Johnny Depp with Mads Mikkelsen, and
oh yeah,
that is upgrade. A handsome man.
That's a big upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they also replaced Colin Farrell with Johnny Depp in the first one, which why? You have Colin Farrell there. He's fine. He's not problematic. But yeah, so he's kind of been on the cusp for a little bit. I feel like they're not really using him to the best visibility here because what they're really looking for is a Jack Black type.
Yeah.
They want like kind of a short, stout, athletic guy who can sing and has kind of like a rock and roll personality. And it feels like they wanted Jack Black and couldn't afford him. So they rein in Dan Fogler a lot and just make him do the Jack Black thing.
When did Pick of Destiny come out?
Around this time, around 2009 or 10 probably.
So it came after this.
Yeah, okay. I think so. Yeah, it's in that window. But yeah, I mean, yeah, he was already too big of a name to kind of get involved with something like this.
And I think Jack Black.
That had happened already.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Jack Black can pull a lot of it off because his natural charisma leans to that.
Right.
Of being the goofy, because at the end of the day, none of his goofiness is like negative or hurting people usually. If anybody's getting hurt, it's usually Jack Black's character by it.
But also he avoids being just like fat guy who falls down.
Yeah.
That's not really he's got a
f-
confidence about him that's a lot of
Yes.
fun. And I think this movie makes Dan Fogler be fat guy who falls down.
Yeah.
Right. I think that the writing doesn't line up with his type of
There's just
charisma.
such a, like
Yeah.
this just reminds me of like so many different but there's like the fat girl who falls down, the fat guy who falls down, and this whole idea of like klutziness being comedic, and very few people, like, you're not Buster Keaton, like, you know, you need to, people falling down isn't always funny, and like there's so many I don't know, it drives me crazy when, like, if a person, you know who could do a pratfall? Cary Grant.
Yes.
Cary Grant could do a pratfall. And that was hilarious in Arsenic and Old Lace. It's fucking gold. But, like, so
But
often.
not in like a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
It can't just be
And-
guy falling down because it would be funny for him to fall down.
I-
No, you need the setup. You need like the proper execution. It's
Yeah.
got to be like kind of a Rube Goldberg
Yes,
machine.
I think that what it comes down to is it funny because it was the quote fat guy falling down? If so, then it's not a good joke. But if it's funny because of what happens, like a Mr. Bean style thing, there are so many people who can do falling and being klutzy and making it funny because it's not about the type of person, it's about the situation and what's happening.
Or it's about
And-
the energy they're putting into the fall. or, like,
Exactly.
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's about so many other things, and the few times that they get the klutz humor out, it doesn't land super well because it's like, oh, it's just the regular amount of funny that this is, which is usually not enough to be like worth it.
Well,
It doesn't pay off well.
in the opening, we don't know whether or not this character is okay. Like, he's a child who loses
Yes.
a giant event, and his father is murdered. You're just like,
we
like
gloss
keeping
over
the
it a
keeping
little
the keeping the father alive and deeply disappointed would, I think, been a stronger move.
Or
And Robert Patrick plays a lot of those types of roles. So like
definitely played a
disappointed,
disappointed-
older
oh yeah.
dad. Yeah.
Or even if he did die when he died, but it was a bigger part of Randy's
story.
character.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. They really don't let Randy carry any of that trauma. And I know you don't want too much of that for a comedy, but
Right.
it would help humanize him a little bit. I think like
Even if there was
think
just
of, like Hot Rod, which is
Yeah.
a similarly very stupid like
Yeah.
I
low-key
really love Hot Rod.
I love Hot Rod to pieces, and you care about Rod because you do see these glimpses of vulnerability. You see that his sadness comes from somewhere, and he's so delusionally confident that you have to get on board. Randy never really gets to be much of anything. We don't really
Exactly.
even when he's at rock bottom, things seem like they're not that bad.
It
He's
doesn't
not out of
phase
control.
him. He's not affected by it. And again, that's a thing that Jack Black does so well in the things that Jack Black does well in that are comedies.
Yeah.
He seems like a person who has the dimensions of feelings, whereas in this we only get to see we don't get to see enough dimensions of Randy's character, and it's not because of the actor.
No.
It's because the actor's never in a situation to do it. They never have that moment of like, even, leading up to the final thing being like, look,
Yeah.
I want to do this for my dad or something. They never, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a focal point, but they
Right.
never touch on any of the things like that. He mentions that his mom died before he met her.
Right.
And then that's also never brought up again. And it's not even when he brings it up, it's because somebody joked about fucking his mother.
Yeah,
and
we
he
don't
brought that
get it-
up and then immediately moved on.
Right. And I mean, I think it's the same way with kind of the romance that they set up here.
Yes.
Like, so the love interest is played by Maggie Q, who is, playing the daughter of the ping pong master, played by James Hong. And we're supposed to believe that there's some kind of chemistry to them, but we cut out this whole journey.
It's his niece, technically.
Oh, it's his
right?
niece. Yes, thank you. We cut out this whole journey of seeing them really like interact. It's just kind of like you get the hostile opening moments, and then you get like, oh, she's really into him now. Like, we don't really get to see that journey, but we're still supposed
Their
to care about the stakes of
kiss
that.
is the most unbelievable kiss I perhaps have seen in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
It's just so like you don't believe their love story at all.
No.
And
it's-
there's
go ahead.
like they have no tender moments before like
Exactly.
all of a sudden that they're together. And it's just so like she is such a shining light, and her kung fu or her, I don't know if it's kung
Martial
fu,
arts.
her martial arts was such a breath of fresh air in the middle of this movie. To be like, oh man, that's a movie I want to be watching, is her kicking ass.
Yeah, I like Maggie Q. Yeah, she's great.
Did you ever see Live Free or Die Hard?
Yes. Yeah.
She was pretty good in that. Yeah. And I think that what it comes down to is that this movie needed a few more scenes in the right places to really drive home the different characters and the relationships. And it maybe could have sacrificed a scene or two elsewhere to make up for it and not end up with a 2-hour-long movie.
Yeah. Well, no, it was only a 90-minute movie. It was only
right. It was an hour and a half, but if we wanted to add those things in, we'd be pushing an hour 45.
But that's kind of the
maybe
thing,
not
too.
even.
Like, this doesn't feel like it has enough to sustain even a short movie. Like, there's not a lot of energy here. I think it's fully like 50 minutes into this 90-minute movie before we get to meet Christopher Walken, who is, for my money, the standout part of this entire movie. I thought his whole every line delivery was really funny. I thought he was in on the joke and having fun. Like, he
was playing an eccentric character and being eccentric while doing it.
Well, and this is his comedy era, right? The early 2000s is kind of like the more cowbell skit on SNL was like this big viral thing before things were going viral. Then he did like Wedding Crashers and he was doing a lot of comedies around this time.
And I was reading, I was doing a little bit of research because whenever I watch these movies, I try not to do any research unless it's something that I'm genuinely interested about. So I was reading an interview.
Did it for you.
Well, I was reading an interview about how they handled the actual ping pong playing and whether or not it was CGI. Some of it was, some of it wasn't. They actually brought in a couple of like actual ping pong masters to train them on how to play ping pong so that when they were filming everything, they genuinely were or looked like they were playing ping pong because they knew how to play ping pong.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like, we set up a ping pong table in the green room and we played whenever we had downtime so we could get some. No, they like trained it. But they mentioned that they were so nervous and anxious about what it would be like having Christopher Walken on set.
Yeah.
And then they ended up saying like he was a fucking delight.
Yeah.
He was so chill. He took things so seriously that when he got to the filming early, a few days early, and then just watched and then did a run through of his lines of the script, kind of monologue style with the directors, and then said, this is what I think is happening. Am I doing this as the same movie everyone else is? Where can I change? What do I need to do to make this fit what we're doing?
Right.
Basically wanting to get on the same page before he actually hit and started recording and acting.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird to think of doing like a lot of very professional preparation for a movie
for this
like
movie.
this, but like, yeah.
But they were like, he was such, and it sounded like they were all having fun. He was having fun. There was apparently a rule on set about how they couldn't do Christopher Walken impressions because the directors were like, we don't need this. Please no. But they apparently were doing it around anyway and trying to get away with it.
We forgot to mention that, I think we teased this at the last week, but this is the first time on this show that Justin has seen the movie beforehand and J-Ben and I have not. Usually it's the exact opposite way. So and you are like the Balls of Fury master here.
I will definitely say I'm not, because I watched it when I was a small child and I barely remember the majority of the movie.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, I was just going to bring up James Hong and how, I thought it was really good, but I also thought it was like the whole blind thing, the whole Mr. Magoo thing is a little like,
Mr. Magoo.
You're just like, I don't know.
I think if they did half
that,
as much, it would have been way better.
It did facilitate what I thought was kind of the funniest single line in the movie, which is the last one. Mm-hmm. And it was, they did a bad Mr. Magoo gag of him falling down the elevator shaft. And then he just finally goes like, we really should close this. We're on the second floor. There's a blind man walking around. Like, I thought that was funny.
And then,
that's the closing line.
Immediately before that, there was also, you got the banger of a line of him going, I'm going to Disney World, basically mocking the main character.
Yeah, that's a running
but also,
gag throughout, yeah.
And it's a thing that, like J-Ben had said at the beginning, when you're like, is this kid okay? It's something similar with like magic tricks of like the serious magic tricks of like we're gonna saw this person in half or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of a general rule, and I'm no expert on this at all, but it's my understanding that there's a general rule of no matter what the stunt is, no matter what's happening, you need to make sure that there is reasonable suspension of disbelief that any harm is actually happening.
Yeah.
Because once the audience feels like the performers are in grave danger, beyond just like excited, they get so concerned they no longer enjoy the show.
Right. I've been told the same thing, like for theatrical sets, because I did a show a couple years ago. It was a production of Noises Off, and I had to fall down 2 flights of stairs at every show. Like, so I was doing this like 6 or 7 times a week, falling down these stairs. And I was always trying to like really hit hard and like really jostle myself and like make my glasses go flying. And my director had to tell me, like, pare it back, because if the old ladies like watching this play think you've really hurt yourself, then they're going to be watching that and not paying attention to the story. It takes them out.
Yes. And that was a thing at the beginning part where I'm like, okay, we at least need to pan over to this kid and make sure the kid's all right.
Yeah.
And then at the end, when he just falls down the fucking elevator shaft, I don't remember how many floors up they are. That guy might be dead.
Yeah.
They did use his voice, but like, I don't know. I think another thing that they could have done, and I feel like this episode is more about like us Monday morning quarterback the show, because it's so
we're comedy nerds already. Yeah.
And but yeah, like or they make the kid incredibly insufferable, and then like maybe that's his comeuppance.
You're not as concerned.
Yeah,
because ultimately the main character went through not even like the proper hero's journey. The main character literally just got everything handed to them. Never really had anything too much in the terms of trials and tribulations.
No.
There was no general growth of anybody throughout the entire movie.
Well, and really the plot driver for this whole movie is this undercover operation that George Lopez is spearheading, because they're trying to infiltrate this drug triad. And that just feels so tacked on and limp. Like, they try and adventure it up at the end by having a weird showdown of a ping pong fight, like outside using electrified vests. Like, they're trying for like a Indiana Jones parody or to make it. But again, the movie never goes silly enough that you feel like you've earned that. You know,
Yeah.
Like, I wanted it to be like much goofier or like just have a little bit more something. Like, I did not expect to watch this movie wishing it had been more offensive, just so I could have something more to talk about it, because it's like it could be better, it could be worse. It's just sort of a nothing movie at the end of the day.
I will say my favorite line of the entire movie is near the end, where one of the buff courtesans, they've been freed, and they're like, we got to get out of here. And he's like, no, I'm going back for the panda.
Oh.
And then like you hear and then a few seconds later he runs back past the camera and goes, panda's dead.
Yeah, and that was like almost a funny bit, like with the you mentioned like the sex slaves, the courtesans, you know, and then they wind up being all these frat boys who were like kidnapped while they were on vacation. And then it's just kind of this like gay panic dance where he thinks that they're gonna have sex with each other, but they just want to play Boggle, and they wind up becoming bros. Like,
I will say the moment that I always forget that guy's name, but I've seen him in so many movies.
Diedrich Bader.
Diedrich Bader,
Yeah,
where he's
great.
like,
he's great.
So want to play a board game? I was like, yes, that was the line we needed, but I think we needed it earlier, and I think the whole situation could have been done so much better.
Well, but that's
so much more tactfully.
I feel like that's kind of the line that this movie's playing with a little bit, where it's trying to subvert your expectations a little bit by not making it be the cheap gay joke, but they're still flirting with it enough that it just doesn't feel like
it doesn't
kind
make
of
you
lands.
comfortable.
No.
Especially in modern times, and maybe back then it landed better. I don't remember the majority of that part of my life.
Yeah. No, but it's like ultimately everything here is just kind of safe and bland and fine. You know, it's like a solid 2-star movie all the way around. And it's like, I kind of want this to be worse, or I want this to be better. You know, I just, Yeah.
Also got a laugh out of when the FBI go full Navy SEALs and like break down the front door. Well, first they're trying to break down the front door and they're just like hitting the door with the ram over and over and over again, and it isn't opening. And then the dude on the side just goes, dude, and then just like breaks the window.
Yeah.
And he's like, that was funny. And then later on when they're like busting in to try to arrest things and they're like, the building's gonna explode, and the guy just like looks up and goes, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like again, there was no strong jokes, no super redeeming qualities. There was a lot of things where like it was toying with the line, but even for something toying with the line, like you only toy with the line if it's worth it.
Yeah.
To a degree. Like, I'm not a big fan of the type of humor that toys the line, but if you toy the line and the joke isn't good.
I think it's really interesting they used, is it George Lopez?
Yeah.
As the straight man, which...
not normal for George Lopez.
No, not normal for him.
Well,
Weirdly, like, so I'm not super familiar with George Lopez's output. I haven't seen a lot of his stuff, but I've come to learn that, like, he's kind of a Gen Z icon right now. Like, the kids really love the George Lopez show.
Yeah.
That's one of the most popular, like, streaming shows out there.
Yeah,
And
I was going to
I don't
say...
understand why, because that one kind of came and went without a notice for me.
I did watch some of that when I was younger, and honestly, it's because it was a little more on the side of, like, wholesome sitcom.
Yeah.
Where he was actually,
Probably
like...
exactly why I avoided it
Yeah,
around that time. Yeah.
he was actually like a chill dad, and I will say that he does play. Obviously, he plays a kind of a goofy character here and there, but it's kind of like Bryan Cranston and Malcolm in the Middle, where
Sure.
like he's the dad, but then he knows when to tell jokes and stuff, and that always felt fun.
Yeah. He's
but then,
fine here. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like he does okay, but again, this movie doesn't give anybody a chance to shine except for like Maggie Q,
And
but
Walken.
even then,
Yeah, I think Walken walks away with the movie for me. But.
yeah, Walken and Maggie Q, but Maggie Q, they don't give her, and I just in the terms of
in like 20 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
she's in like 20 minutes of the film, but she only really like the first time you see her when she gets into that fight. And then the next time she fights is just like, oh, this is just a wire stunt.
They bring her back at the end as like a really forced way to manufacture some stakes. You know, it's like, all right, so now you need to play against her if you want to, save your life or whatever.
Yeah.
It all gets very convoluted.
When she eventually shows down with that guy when they're on the way out, I wish it would have been a bit more of a fight and not just like a gag. But yeah, nobody really got a good chance in this movie.
And you're totally right, Jay, but we are just like Monday morning quarterbacking this because
Yeah.
it's not a movie that really invites you to explore its larger themes, because there isn't really anything meaty here.
And I'll say, by and away, I'm not an expert, but because I'm not an expert and I can see these things that any number of them being better would have dramatically improved
And I
the
think
movie.
in the modern, like, 2023 perspective, it's also like slightly uncomfortable being like watching this movie and be like, ouch, it's real cliche. It's like it's got a lot of like Asian like stereotypes that you're just like, is this okay? I don't know if this is okay. Seems not okay to me.
They kind of get away with it because James Hong is there and
Yeah.
he's going so full-throated and is having fun with this part, but like, yeah, it does feel. It's how many times has he had to play this role in his career? Like so many times.
Yeah, it's definitely a very cliched movie, and again, it's like following Karate Kid and Dodgeball together. And then like some kung fu movies from back in the day, and you get this.
Well, it's just like there's so many ones that do it better, like Kung Fu Hustle or Shaolin Soccer.
Yeah.
Like
Kung Pao, Enter the Fist.
Yes.
Obviously. Yeah.
But I don't know. Like again, it's just so like watching this movie felt like I love the actors.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like the movie like can coast on the actors' charms, but at the same time, I don't know. It was like I just didn't like it.
Well, and I think most people agreed with you. This movie made $42 million U.S. box office, which isn't bad, but it probably didn't cost much less than
I
that.
looked for the budget, and
I
I
did
could
too.
not find the budget.
I'd be willing to estimate somewhere between 20 and 30. That'd be my guess, because this isn't like a super low budget thing, and there are some stars in it, but nobody who's going to command like a huge payday. So I would guess around 20, 25.
Yeah, it wasn't super effects heavy in any way.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's a lot of movies at this time period that did very
Everything.
similar things very
Yeah.
much better.
Yeah.
Fully agree.
Now, a question that we often need to consider on this show, just because of the nature of the premise of the show, is does this movie deserve a video game adaptation for one reason or the other?
No.
Now, here's the thing.
I think this
Here's
movie.
an argument I'm going to make. Ping-pong is fundamental to the history of video games. Literally, the very first video game in 1958, the very first thing even casually identified as a video game, was a very rudimentary ping pong game that scientists made using an oscilloscope, and they would like measure the various pitches in their voices to play ping pong on that. And then, of course, the first breakout arcade and home console was Pong, which is absolutely just ping pong. That continued to endure throughout the Wii. The biggest draw of the Wii when that first came out in 2006 was that free pack-in game Wii Sports, which had a tennis game on there. There is something very elemental about ping pong and video games. So it absolutely 100% makes sense to make this game.
I think
it makes sense to make it.
I think if done reasonably well, they could have made a game that was better than the movie.
I think so.
I don't know if the movie
This
deserved
kind
the
of-
game.
This kind of
but-
has that potential of like, you know, how more people remember GoldenEye as a video game than a movie at this point. And I think this could have had that potential of like, oh, there's a Balls of Fury movie. I remember playing that game a lot.
It could have
you know?
been a Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Totally. You could have had like a fun, like wacky sports thing, but they put a very, very little amount of effort into.
Are we
this
transitioning into the game now?
translation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's time to transition. We're talking about the Balls of Fury game, which came out in September of 2007. So about a month.
I thought we were
after
talking about
this.
Mario Kart.
Oh yes, yeah. Mario Kart is a good game that we like. So this came out on the Wii and on the DS. From what I understand, the DS version is better, at least according to reviews at the time.
I feel like this is a game that, with the way they implemented the motion controls in the game, if the game didn't have the motion controls, it would have been a better game. And if the game had better motion controls, it would have been a better game. But having the motion controls it had just basically ruined the ceiling of what this game could be.
This is a very, very, very bare minimum effort. There's a couple of things. There's a story mode, there's an arcade mode, exhibition, tournament. Those are your only modes that you get. Story mode, this is the second time we've witnessed this on a Wii game, because when we played the Grease game, like the cutscenes or like the story was told basically through either still images or like little rerun clips from the movie that don't feature any of the bankable
But
stars.
this one, they didn't actually show the clips. They just showed pictures.
This
Pictures.
was a slideshow
Yeah.
where we see indelible moments from the motion picture masterpiece Balls of Fury. You see this and you like cycle through it and read a little bit about the plot, and then you play like moments in the game or in the movie. We didn't get very far in the story mode because the Master Wong, who's like the third character, is kind of impossible. Or at least I don't think he's impossible. I think
It's not possible for any of the three of us.
I think his difficulty exceeded our interest. Not
Yes.
so much our ability, it exceeded our interest to keep trying.
Like, look, the whole time we were playing this game, I was just thinking about actually playing ping pong
Yeah.
and about how this wasn't scratching the itch in any way, shape, or form.
I was
No.
thinking about Wii tennis, how
Right.
much I enjoyed Wii tennis.
Because it's objectively a better game.
Wii Tennis is so responsive and so easy to play, and like this game feels alternately too easy and too punishing because it's so forgiving about where you are, like to catch your ball, like
So
to take your swings and
technically,
everything.
it's because I don't think in any way, shape, or form it considers where the remote is.
No.
It's only considering timing and which direction, like what motion you're making.
Well, not even that, because I was making front hand and backhand motions to see if there's any kind of distinction.
So
It doesn't
apologies.
register it.
When I say the motion you're making, it's very limited. If it's to the left, you're hitting to the left. If it's to the right, you're hitting to the right. If you go up, it does. Yeah, it's very limited in what it's doing, but there is no semblance of like it's not that good. It's a game that could have just had normal controls. If it didn't have motion controls, the exact same game, exact same elements would have played better on just like an Xbox or a PlayStation controller.
I mean, there were so many games like this on the Wii, which just felt like really cheap shovelware that kind of like took this rudimentary idea. So like when I did my show about the Wii U, it was called Wii Universe. You can find it out there still. We played a lot of mini game collections because that's like the cheap and easy way to cash in on your Wii or your Wii U purchase. And it's all like lazy little arcade games like this. Except this only gives you the one arcade game. It's not like we get to switch between like tennis and bowling and golf and things like that. You just get the one.
What you said earlier about ping pong being integral to the history of gaming.
Yeah.
For decades, nay, more than a half a century.
Yeah.
People have been enjoying electronic ping pong.
Yeah.
Until this moment.
Difficult is it to make something universally beloved so boring?
And
that's
boring.
So there's two main issues. We've already talked about how the motion controls are definitely an issue, and the other issue is that there's like one speed that the ball gets hit at. Whether you're lobbing it, whether you're doing they refer to it as a smash.
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing, the ball is traveling at roughly the same speed. It does not accelerate. It does not decelerate. It just kind of moves. And so it feels like two people trying to do a long volley. And not two people trying to win at ping pong.
It's kind of like a war game situation here, where the only way to win is not to play, because it's got that same issue that tic-tac-toe does, which is you will play tic-tac-toe forever until somebody makes a stupid mistake or gets bored.
Yep.
That's kind of what this does, because the play
or the motion controls fucks you,
and everything's so like samey, you know. It's like any motion is going to do what you want it to do. You don't really need to worry about accuracy or strategy. You get like a power meter that you could charge up, and you press the A button, it'll make it do like a wacky animation, which is usually just looks like a glitch.
Yeah.
It looks like sometimes a ball will like warp out of frame and then come back somewhere else. It's far lazier versions of what they do in Mario Tennis. And you get like the power-ups.
And you can taunt people, but the taunts are real lame.
You only get one taunt per character.
One taunt per character. With the case of young Randy, who you play in the first level of the stair, they didn't even like remaster the audio. It sounded like somebody took a tape recorder next to the TV and recorded audio from the movie and then put that in the game. Like the rest were at least samples.
Look, we had a low budget.
Yeah, extremely low budget. Yeah, I mean, and the character designs are ghastly, because it's like they projected the actors' actual faces onto their like these little orbs, and then they put them on a misshapen body, but the faces never move. They're like this weird dead rictus that like it will move, won't move no matter how you look at it, and then it seems disembodied from their body, kind of like Rayman or something, you know.
Roughly around this time was when Rainbow Six Vegas came out.
Uh-huh.
And that game had a feature that people who are familiar will know, because it was so fucking funny.
I think I know what
where
you're
you
talking
could
about.
scan your face with the Xbox camera, which, mind you, doesn't have any way to do depth. That camera did not have any way to do depth. The Kinect did. The Kinect used an IR sensor to get depth information, but this did not. And then it would try to create your face on the character of your multiplayer profile, and it always looked fucking hilarious. It never was correct. Nobody ever got a good looking character out of it. You always got something stupidly cartoonish. And honestly, that's what this reminded me of when I was watching it. It was just like the faces aren't modeled quite well to match the face of the actual person. It all looks weird. Proportions are a little bit off, and the style doesn't match this. The style tries to look more realistic as opposed to stylized, where you could pull this off.
Which the Wii often did stylize. Like Grease did stylize for the Wii. The music wasn't too bad, as well as the movie. They did have Def Leppard.
I don't think it was actually Def Leppard in the game, though.
I don't
No,
think it was
100%.
No,
It was a royalty-free track. Yeah.
It was like a rock. It definitely wasn't Def Leppard in the game.
It was Blind Panther. Yes.
They paid a local band to come in and just play a few very basic songs
But considering
with no
last
vocals.
week's-
Yeah.
Yes.
We're just kind of judging everything against
Yeah.
that Roger Rabbit score now. Yeah.
Like, it was a very generic sounding soundtrack. It was just like generic rock music. But it wasn't a 7-second loop.
Yeah. Of the most horrible sound you've ever heard.
It was
Yeah.
actually all right. And that's why I was saying, like,
But it starts to drone. That's the
It does.
thing. Because these matches last for so long. Like in real ping pong, you play to 11 points and you need a 2-point differential in order for you to win. But that translates to such a long thing when the game is so forgiving, because you get like 30 to 40 level volleys going back and forth with your characters. And then, it's eating up huge chunks of your time.
There's two things that are different with playing an actual ping pong game. One is adrenaline. You care a lot more about it, so time passes differently when you're actually playing. You kind of lose track of time.
Second is groupies. You get groupies when you play this
that's
game.
it.
Yes.
And the second one is, again, the ping pong is a variable speed, typically played at the faster end.
Yeah.
So you can slow it down, but slowing it down is just going to give the other person time to really slam one home on you. And so it's usually played at a pace that is much quicker than the game.
Yeah.
And I think if the game actually tried to play at that pace, the controls would be unplayable.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this game suffered from the most, was
I don't know,
the pacing was
in
just
Wii
so
Tennis,
bad.
You can get quite fast.
No, unplayable with this game's
Okay.
motion controls. Not motion controls in general, but this implementation of motion controls.
Yeah.
It would have been unplayable at a normal speed.
Unplayable at a normal speed. I think the byline of this game.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's the biggest problem.
because they slow it down, it just drags on, and so you lose to Master Wong, and it's like, all right, well, I have to do it again because I have to beat the blind man in ping pong, and he's good.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, but like, look, for it being the third person to face in the story, man.
Yeah.
But we definitely, it was real quick to where we figured out the gist of the game pretty quick.
Yeah, sometimes like we'll play these for a while and then we'll get to a point where we're like, all right, let's check out a walkthrough. I want to see like a little bit deeper into this game.
We did not want to see any
We did not feel
deeper.
that compulsion. with
We
this one.
played against each other in the exhibition mode, and that was
More fun.
it was
Slightly better,
but still not as good as like I've played other Wii games that have just been more fun and like required more timing and energy of me, and like Justin said, it doesn't matter if I like smashed it or put like energy behind it or like spun it, or it just didn't matter to the game. Like
No.
my enthusiasm physically for it didn't matter if I was just flicking my wrist or like giving a whole hell lot on the backhand.
Yeah. No, it really didn't matter. And,
like-
again, the thing we need to stress once again is that Wii Sports was a free game that came with your Wii.
And
that
it came out-
everybody had. You didn't need to pay extra money or
Yeah.
have an obnoxious movie license
This game
attached to it.
came out on the Wii after Wii Sports, so we'd already seen. And there was, oh God, I'm forgetting the name of it, but I am almost
Citizen Kane.
positive there is a table tennis series of games
There is.
that is like branded with, it's like
a
somebody's
Rockstar
name.
Games. Oh,
Yeah.
no, there is a
Yeah,
Rockstar,
Rockstar.
Games, like just a pinball game, like the game
Ping-pong.
that's like or ping pong game that's like supposed to be a really accurate. I mean, I think it's
And-
just called table
And
tennis.
I've played that, and it was fun.
Sure.
And we didn't have motion controls. So you had two options with this game. You either had to do good motion controls to make it fun, or you had to do good normal controls. And since it's a Wii game, they went motion controls, and they did a terrible job of
Yeah.
it. It has promise, but again, it can't realize any of that promise.
It's an interesting case where like the movie doesn't need to exist. The game could have justified the existence of the movie. Like this is a way where like that synchronicity could have really benefited both of them had one of them stuck the landing, and neither of them really did. And so we're left with just kind of nothing both ways, you know. I am disappointed. I was hoping to be able to like rail more on a terrible movie or rail more on a truly terrible game, and both of them are just like bad enough to not be interesting, but they never get to the transcendent levels of terribleness like E.T. or Roger Rabbit, you know.
It turned out this movie,
The game.
Yes, of course. The game. Yes. We should clarify.
Was this the lowest Metacritic movie we've?
I think Toys was less, and Toys I will say is a worse movie. Yeah.
I don't know. I there are things I enjoyed about Toys.
Oh, not me.
Toys is a better movie if you edit some out.
Yeah, like the first 90 to 120 minutes.
No, I think you could edit out 30 minutes and have a good movie on Toys. Like,
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know, good, like an adequate movie.
You'd have, a more palatable one.
It had 20 more minutes, and that was edited out, and we ended up with they edited out the parts they should have kept.
Yeah.
At least most of the parts we should have kept, and so then opposite of Toys, where it just felt like it was so long and nothing happened, it felt like it was short and things happened, or at least the right reasonable length. Things happened and none of it was good. None of it was bad, but it was such a man movie.
We'll put it this way.
It was a by the numbers comedy, which there's nothing worse than a by the numbers comedy because it's just like.
Yeah, there's nothing really justifying its existence.
If we went to a stand-up show and they were telling jokes about why the chicken crossed the road or doing knock-knock jokes, we'd be bored unless they were doing something creative and new, and this movie didn't really hit.
Well, this reminds me of like of what currently we are in sort of like a filmic crisis regarding comedies.
Yeah.
Like what I didn't manage to get to see the Jennifer Lawrence comedy, but that's like
No Hard Feelings. I like that a lot. Yeah.
That's like the only major comedy motion picture that came out in the last 6. Well, not that's Bottoms that's coming out.
I would say Barbie is a comedy. Barbie's a straight comedy. Yeah.
Is Barbie a comedy?
Oh, it's totally a comedy. That's like a wacky comedy.
I laughed my ass off during it, but I wouldn't necessarily.
I would say
I would call it a film.
Okay, all right. Oh,
It transcends
her pinky just went up. That was crazy. Yeah.
She has a monocle on now? That's...
Oh,
and a top hat.
My word.
Here, let me straighten your bow tie.
Thank you.
No, yeah, we do need to see more comedy. I think it's been a good year for film comedies. It hasn't been a good year for film comedy box office, but comedy box office has been struggling for the last couple of years. And it's a shame, and I hope that's just one of the many trends that Barbie helps turn around. Yeah, I like
the three of us came out of Renfield going, that was a fun movie, it was a decent movie. I don't know if I'd say it was a masterpiece or something.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was a good time.
It was fun, and it probably should have...
I didn't feel like I wasted my time.
It was better than many of the Transformers movies.
Yeah.
And those movies rake in money like nobody's business.
Yeah. No, go figure.
Clearly it needed more robots and explosions.
We did.
Did somebody I had this quote this week, and I don't know if it's true, but somebody on TikTok said that Baldur's Gate made more money for Hasbro than all the Transformers movies.
I'd be willing to bet that game has been huge. I'm excited to play it.
That game broke the Steam concurrent players record, I believe.
Yeah.
Which means that of all of the major PC titles in Steam's history, going back to Half-Life 2 in 2004, it had the most players playing it at one time, which is absolutely insane for an RPG in general.
Mm-hmm.
The sequel to a game that a lot of people haven't played, and it's cool. It's kind of dominating my news feed, and I haven't even played it yet. That's usually how I know it's like a big deal.
It's like I have an order of games that are playing. I've been playing the F1 game, the F1 management game, and then Armored Core comes out like today. Yeah. So that one's gonna occupy my time, and then after that is when I'm gonna hit Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
After it cools down a little bit, Not because of that, but just that's when I'm probably going to get to.
What are you gonna play it on?
PC.
PC.
I pre-ordered it for my PS5, so it's not coming out until early September.
I play as much as possible on PC because even if I want to play this game with a controller, I have one I can plug in.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right. Well, I think we're ready to move on to our rankings, given that we've moved to talking about Baldur's Gate. Oh, and our Balls of Fury. Baldur's of Fury. There we go. I got it back around. So let's move on to our rankings. I think I kind of know where we're all going to stand on this one, but is this a good movie, good game, bad movie, bad game, or does it fall somewhere in between? For me, this is going to be only my second bad movie, bad game. I think I feel softer on this than I did on Toys. Toys was my first bad movie, bad game, and I thought both of those were dramatically worse in either direction. This is just such a fart in the wind of a movie. It's just so insubstantive and so, like, not really funny. Like, I got one or two smiles out of it, but mostly this is less interesting than Dodgeball, a true underdog story, which is already pretty sad. So, J-Bam, how about you?
Bad movie, bad game.
Yeah, on the board. Because I think, you didn't defend Toys that vehemently.
No, I thought I said that Toys product design, background, like the scenic design was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And watching it, like, I got a lot of benefit watching it from the background,
right?
And the beautiful design, but it was what it was.
Yeah,
I was just reminded of the tie-ins between this movie and a previous movie we have reviewed, Scarface.
Yeah, the Scarface quotes.
George Lopez quoted Scarface
right.
like 5 times in the movie.
I think it was twice.
I think I don't know if he's a character in this game. We didn't unlock him yet, but I'm willing to bet that's going to be his little catchphphrase when you press the taunt button.
Did y'all watch the final, like, closing thing? Where it's just singing and karaoke.
Oh, and
yeah,
the
That
outtakes.
was fun.
Yeah.
Honestly, that whole part of the movie was probably more enjoyable than the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, it's good. They had a good time making this. Good for them. Great.
Bad movie, bad game.
Yeah.
Again, similar to Steve, I'm a little soft on the movie part just because it's so meh that I feel bad saying it's a bad movie, but I think it being so meh means it's a bad movie.
If it were 10% funnier, it would be a good, like, background when I'm bored kind of movie.
Yeah,
it's a good folding laundry movie, but it's just not quite there.
The needle twitched a couple of times, but didn't go anywhere.
No,
like,
not so much.
It didn't go up. The funnies really, every once in a while, there was a little twitch of funnies, and then the rest of it, I was just kind of like watching something happen.
Well, I can tell you for sure I'm going to feel a lot more about next week's game and movie, I should say, because we are entering Disney for the first time.
Ooh.
We have not talked about a Disney game. We have a lot of them down the line. This is going to be our first one. And for me, and maybe this is going to be my hot take, I think this is the best Disney movie. And I stand by this. I'm going to see where you guys come down on it. Next week, we are going to be playing Lilo and Stitch.
Oh,
Lilo
okay.
and
Stitch.
Stitch.
I knew this was coming up. I played a lot of this game.
You played this game?
Yes.
Okay, I've never played this game, but I deeply love this movie.
This is the one where it's like Stitch agent something or other. It's a game based around Stitch.
I don't think so. This is going to be the Game Boy Advance game that's based directly on the movie. But there were some more spin-offs.
Okay.
Yeah, there were a few Stitch games.
Gotcha.
But this will be the Game Boy Advance game based directly on the film. I'm excited to talk about it.
I don't think I have played this one.
Well, there you go. Well, we're going to play a little bit of it next week. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And we will see you next time for some Lilo and Stitch. Bye, everybody.